Welcome to Talkin' SEC. Writer, photographer, and producer Phillip Jordan discusses the latest news and breaks down the biggest games with the best analysts around. Now, from Southeast Alabama, a state that knows its sports, here is Phillip Jordan.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in to Talking SEC. Happy Tuesday to everybody. It is Tuesday, so you know what that means. That means I ain't going to be joined by Coach Max Howell. So yesterday on the show, you heard my thoughts on SEC Week 8. But now on Tuesday, we'll bring in Coach Max Howell. We'll break it down. Of course, Coach Howell, former Ole Miss and Florida State assistant coach, Troy Sports Hall of Famer, and 25-plus years in sports talk radio. So he will give his breakdown, some X's and O's talk with Coach Howell on how some of these games break down. We will talk about the LSU Ole Miss game, Mississippi State, Alabama, and South Carolina and Texas A&M. So I'm sorry, no UT Martin, Tennessee, and no Vanderbilt, Missouri breakdown here on this episode of the show. But we will talk Tennessee football. We will get an early look at the Tennessee-Kentucky matchup coming up this Saturday. And on tomorrow's podcast, we'll have a mystery guest on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, Matt Lowe from Lowdown Sports will be joining me on the show. You can check out Talking SEC on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. It means a lot to the show if you do that. If you leave a review, I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can also watch the show over on YouTube, either at the Phillip Jordan YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and leave a comment on a video. I'll read that on a future edition of the show. Also over on the Talking SEC YouTube channel as well. You can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com or hit me up on social media at pjordansec. It is Tuesday, so y'all know what that means. I am joined by Coach Max Howell, Troy Sports Hall of Famer, Ole Miss and FSU assistant back in the 80s, and then 25-plus years in sports talk radio. And Coach Howell, it's good to talk us and college football with you again this week.
You know, it seems like just yesterday, Phillip, we were talking about we couldn't wait till the season to get started. And here we are coming up on the 8th week of the season. It flies once the season starts. But, the real polls will start coming out next week, and we'll find out, kind of how the top four for the playoff situation is going to look like. And looks like probably it'll be two more SEC teams vying for the national championship.
Yeah, I really feel like it just should be like the top two teams in the SEC versus the top two teams in the Big Ten. The way the season is going right now.
That's right. That's very true. Or the two top teams anywhere else in the country. How about that? So, but yeah, it appears it's going to be close to that anyway. Clemson might make it. I watched their game Saturday night, and it was okay. Syracuse was better than I thought. A really good passing attack, but Clemson they started their regular quarterback, but they used a pure freshman the second half, and he led them down to a touchdown at the end of the ball game. So I think Dabo's got taken a lesson out of somebody's book right now, trying to be sure he's got a couple of players ready just in case one doesn't work out for him.
Yeah, I watched that game too. I told the audience on the Monday show, I said, yes, Tennessee and UT Martin was the SEC game on 11, but that thing was on the TV that gets the less attention. I was watching Clemson and Syracuse most of that early window on Saturday because I kind of knew that Tennessee and UT Martin was going to kind of go the way it went. SEC coming out of Week 8, just for you, what was something that stood out to you the most?
Well, I think I watched the Alabama game with Mississippi State. Remember last year, Mississippi State was rolling along. They met Alabama. Alabama won, I think, 49-9 in that ball game. They had 7 sacks, and they kind of shut them down completely. Of course, the week before this year, if you remember, it was at Knoxville. That atmosphere is much like what it is at LSU, and we'll talk a little bit about that game too. But the fact is that Alabama played cautious to begin with, and it was like it wasn't the Alabama team. I think I tried to reevaluate that, Phillip, and probably the difference in the talent level between Mississippi State's wide receivers and the defensive backs at Alabama. They didn't want them to get too close. I think they only had 1 or 2 penalties the whole ball game. But it was a little bit different. If you remember, they had 2 reviews right at the beginning of the ball game. one, I think one was they thought was a targeting. I don't recall what the second was, but they had two, and I think that the officials set the tone for that. But Alabama came away with, let's say, one or two penalties. They only scored 30, but they held Mississippi State to 6. And I know Coach Saban was extremely pleased because they shut the running game down. They pretty well already had a key on the passing game. So that game was of interest to see how Alabama would come back after so much was made to do the week before at Tennessee, the game they lost. But then I think the other one was Ole Miss cruising into Baton Rouge undefeated. And they got manhandled physically. They got beat on both sides of the line, offense and defense. And really, when we step back and think about it, just because they had a coaching change, and I really wasn't excited about the coaching change there. I knew that they had to make one, but I was a little surprised about the choice. But needless to say, that team has gotten better. And the outgoing staff did not leave an empty cupboard. They had some good athletes, and they showed out. And I think they're going to get better. I think they lost that. They beat Mississippi State the first one, then lost a couple. But the fact is I think they're improving, and I think they'll win 2 or 3 more ball games. Alabama goes in. Alabama's off this week, but they go in next week. That line will probably be 6 or somewhere in that range. It's going to be very low. Alabama will probably be favored. But those are the things that I took away, other than I know we'll talk a little bit about Texas A&M and South Carolina, and I got some really good thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, on that Ole Miss LSU game, and like last week when we talked, my mindset was I was probably leaning toward Ole Miss, but then as I went toward the week, I said, you know what, Ole Miss defensively has not looked good the 2 weeks prior. Yep. I mean, Vanderbilt that first half moved the ball up and down the field on them, and then Auburn ran for 301 yards on them. So I was kind of, Ole Miss's defense may not be where we thought it was before the Vanderbilt game. And then, and LSU was coming off a good game momentum against Florida. I tell you what, I watched that game first quarter. It was 17-3 early second quarter. Oh, no, is this going to be Tennessee all over again for LSU? But after that, I mean, it was all LSU. And to me, it really looked like I don't know what you saw watching the game, but it really looked like LSU dominated them up front on the offensive and defensive lines.
They did. I don't think there's any doubt that's where they won the ball game. But the fact is, too, and I'm not really excusing Ole Miss for this, but 8 of those starters, Lane Kiffin went heavy into the transfer portal. I think 27 players he brought in. 8 of those starters on defense was not even on the practice field when they started 2-a-days. They all came in that first week. So that's still, even though it's 8th game of the season, they should be able to learn the system. But sometimes it takes a year or two for kids to learn to play together more than anything else. But you're right. They got manhandled physically and on the line of scrimmage on both sides. And I think that's what LSU's going to, I think that's going to be their forte the remaining part of the season. They're going to line up, just try to knock you off the ball, run it till you stop that, then they'll play action and try to get outside with that running quarterback. So anyway, I think Ole Miss probably got a couple more losses on this schedule for the end of the year. I thought at the beginning of the year they won 10 last year. They had 27, 28 guys that not all seniors, but had used up their eligibility. They had to go into the portal to replace those guys. I felt like they could not win 10 again. I thought they might get 8 or 9. You still might, but they're going to have to work at it to get. They got 7 now. They'll have to struggle to get 2 more wins out of the last 4 ball games.
I guess too with Lane Kiffin now, you got to be looking at your team now. Like, okay, now I've got to go. And maybe not this week. You're playing Texas A&M, but a lot of these games going forward, you're just going to have to put a bunch of points on the board because now you see your defense just may not be capable of stopping teams, especially run. Because LSU had 252 on the ground. I mean, I know Jaden Daniels had 121 of that, but their running backs at LSU have been playing a lot better lately too as well.
Yep. Well, they have. Like I say, I think that was a turning point for LSU. And probably a wake-up call for Ole Miss. They've got, of course, they were out there. I think the Evans kid, the second running back, didn't get a chance to play very much or at all. And they had to rely on the kid from down at Pike Road, just south of Montgomery. That nobody, by the way, Alabama and Auburn didn't even offer. who's going into the ballgame. I think he was like number 1 or number 2 in the nation in yards per carry. But the fact is, they only had one running back that was effective. And I think they'll need both of them the rest of the way, and they're going to have to do something about ball control. They can't throw it, 2 out of every 3 downs, and expect to win, probably 1 or 2 more ball games at least.
And you talked about LSU has shown improvement. And, that Tennessee game, when they lost 40-13, that could have been a team going a tailspin after that. But these last 2 weeks, they have played really well. And Jaden Daniels, he was 21-28 in this game, 248, 2 touchdowns passing, 3 on the ground. He's had 11 total touchdowns last 2 weeks. Just watching LSU this year, where have you seen him in his development? Because when I watched him play that first game at Florida State, he looked like a one-read-and-run guy. The main guy he was supposed to throw to wasn't open. He was going to take off with it. Now he's not doing that. He actually looks like he's going through his progressions. But for you watching this team and him this year, where have you seen him improve?
Yeah, I think you summed it up right there. The improvement, though, is coming primarily, with the quarterback reads. He's making his right reads right there. But I got to go back to the offensive defensive front. I think there's where they're going to win the football games. There's some talented kids on there. Now, they're not quite as good as Georgia was last year. But I'm going to tell you, they play hard, and when they play at night in Baton Rouge, I mean they got the edge. And that Alabama game will be a night game next week down there. So that's why I think the line will probably be 6, maybe. It could drop as low as 3. I think Alabama will be favored. But Alabama better not go down there and think they'll walk in Baton Rouge and win that football game. They're going to have to coach them hard. Of course, that's one of the reasons Phillip, they always have an open date before they go to they play LSU, whether they play in Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge. But going to Baton Rouge at night under the conditions which they are having to, that's going to be another nail biter, in my opinion. I don't think Alabama will make as many mistakes as they did, but I believe he'll take the bridles back off from them. And what we saw this week against Mississippi State, he'll let them play a little harder and make those defensive backs play a little closer to him, as opposed to what he did with Mississippi State's.
Yeah, that game, Alabama, Mississippi State, and I do believe that was the first time Mike Leach's Mississippi State teams has scored a touchdown against Alabama, and it was the first time Mississippi State has scored a touchdown against Alabama and Bryant Denny since 2014. But
that's about right, yeah.
When you see Mike Leach, I mean, he has success against certain teams, even since he's been in the SEC, but it's not worked against Alabama. Do you think that is he doesn't have the talent, the wide receiver, and Alabama's just so much more talented, just athletically in the secondary, or is just his scheme just doesn't work against Alabama?
It's the scheme. It's a system that he has, a well-coached football team that has good, can put the rush. Look, the quarterback situation there he's better than Will Rogers is better than average. But I'm going to tell you, he throws to a spot. That's the difference in he and the Tennessee offense where they throw to the wide receiver. They both have a system, but it's completely opposite. In Tennessee's system, you got to play man coverage. You got to, basically you got to try to run with it, or if not, you're going to have to play a 3-deep zone on them, and nobody wants to do that anymore because it gives up the short game. But the fact is Mike Leach has always had that, and why he's had success, I think, early in the season. The first couple of years, he always has to perfect his passing game, and then he's able to, bring in the running game and the defensive side of the ball. That's true when he was at Texas Tech, and it was true when he was at Washington State. So I think it's not just the fact that Alabama has the more talented players, but the fact is, Kentucky did the same thing to them. Mm-hmm. They shut the short game down. And, they did, the thing about Kentucky is they had a big, they got the big running back. They kept his offense on the sideline. They ran the football on him. So, there's a couple of ways to beat Mississippi State. Alabama's, dominated that mainly because of their athletes. But the fact is, there'll be some other people along. I thought this year more people would have picked up on it, but everybody's rush 3 and drop 8, man. So Leach, ran the football. He has some success doing that. So, I'm anxious to see as this thing unfolds. I know I'm getting ahead, but the Egg Bowl that Thanksgiving weekend, Thanksgiving night will be a really interesting. It is being planned as startable this year, and that'll be one for the for the media to take a hard look at, see how that game comes out.
Yeah, looking at the stats on the game is interesting because Mississippi State actually outgained Alabama, 293 to 290. Alabama could not run the ball; it's only 29 rushing yards in the game. Bryce Young did what he does at 21 to 35, 249, 2 touchdowns. But it did feel like at times, though, he had to kind of put that Superman cape on once again because the offensive line kind of had some issues and let pressure got to him a few times.
Yep. Well, that's kind of been the history. I did a couple of shows. I always do a Monday morning show in Tuscaloosa, and that came up this morning. The fact is they need another running back. Don't tell me there's not somebody else out there that they could put in. Gibbs has done an outstanding job. Without him, I don't know where they'd be right now. But the other side of that is you got Bryce Young. He gets to play from the sideline. He gets to check it. I know one time they counted 10 seconds before he ever threw a touchdown pass. Because the offensive line did do a good job, and excuse me, and they thought, the defense thought that they would, the secondary would be able to cover it, but they can't if he gives them that long to throw. So, talent will win it most of the time, but there's another game we're going to talk about in a minute where talent didn't win because it reverted to the coaching staff, and so. Alabama, Mississippi State, that one's in the books now. I'm not saying they'll always beat Mississippi State, but when's the last time Mississippi State not only didn't score a touchdown on, but had actually beat Alabama? I mean, that has to go back several years.
Yeah, it's been a long time. They couldn't even beat him when they had Dak Prescott. I mean, when he was a quarterback.
Right.
And you had an NFL quarterback out there, and you still struggled. I mean, it feels like every year, even when Dan Mullen was there, I mean, every year it just feels like, okay, Alabama can just kind of, I don't want to say coast, but it almost feels like they do in these games in Mississippi State because they'll be like 30-6, 24-0 because they know Mississippi State can't score on them. So I feel like Nick Saban probably goes and says, we'll just score 20 points and we've got the game won.
That's very true. Very true. But, it's hard to recruit to a program like both Ole Miss and Mississippi State in comparison to Alabama. I mean, look at their overall win-loss record. See how many kids they put in the NFL. All the things Alabama's able to use in recruiting, Ole Miss, Mississippi State can't use. I'm just amazed sometimes that they don't utilize the junior college system more than they do. Mississippi's got 14 junior colleges that play football, and they have playoffs. I live in a town where Etowah Community College is, and I go on Thursday nights a lot of times to watch them play. And there's some good, talented athletes come through, but the fact is that they don't reach in there. Of course, the portal has helped both teams, I know, but a lot of coaches don't want to use that because they think their recruiting is good enough to do it. But when you come down and look at the win-loss record, Phillip, I'm going to tell you, it's not there. It's not there winning the big ball game.
Talking about the game that was the last game of the Saturday was Texas A&M and South Carolina. I went in this game thinking, okay, Texas A&M is just more talented than South Carolina. They should win this game. I thought it would be close, but I thought Spencer Rattler would make a mistake. But I tell you, A&M is just they continue to struggle, and I think a lot of attention on Jimbo Fisher, which, I mean, they're stuck with him. I mean, that buyout, man, I don't think even with Texas money, they're going to get the money for that buyout. And it just seems like the quarterback has been the issue with him since he's there. And he has a worse record at this point in his A&M career than Kevin Sumlin had. So, I mean, that's another thing I saw out there, too. I think he's lost 2 more games than Kevin Sumlin had at this point. But when you look at Texas A&M, what's the issue? Is it Jimbo Fisher being the play caller? Does he need to relinquish those duties? I mean, what are the issues when you watch Texas A&M play?
Let me tell you, in my opinion, at that level, those games are won and lost from Monday to Thursday. Mm-hmm. And also, when you got the talent that A&M has, after Monday through Thursday's practice, then it's what happens on the sideline. And there's a disconnect or some kind of miscommunication or no communication between the sidelines. My daughter and my son-in-law both have season tickets. They go to every game. They live in Columbia. And they call me during the game. and we talk about it as I watched the game. Here's what I made the assessment of that ball game. One side had a lot of great talent and an average coach. The other team had a really good coach and average talent. And the really good coach and average talent won that football game. And I'm going to tell you what it's doing for Shea Beamer. Is it's thrown his name out there, Phillip, as a major candidate for a big time job. Take nothing away from South Carolina, but think about it. They were able to lure Lou Holtz there at the end of his career, and Steve Spurrier as well. But also at the mid-season of Coach Spurrier's last year, he resigned in the middle of the year. So that had to have been some kind of internal problems that, hopefully they've got settled now. They go out, they had Muschamp come through, and they ended up, obviously bringing in Beamer. And I think he's a good young name. And I'll tell you, right now, that name's floating around Auburn, by the way. So I'm proud for him. I think, South Carolina sits in a place where their high school football programs are fairly strong, but Florida goes in there, Georgia goes in there, Clemson's there, Tennessee goes in. I mean, it's hard for them to get a number of quality players. And they'll get 22 that can play, but, in the Southeastern Conference, you better have 40 that can play on any Saturday. So, they've improved their recruiting list. He's a great recruiter, and I think he does really a good job on the football sideline. So that's what I have to say about it. I think Jimbo's, he dug him a rich grave. Let's put it that way. $95 million if they fired him today. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to, but look, he's got another law. He can't beat LSU playing like that. What we've seen about LSU now, they got them at the end of the season. So that'll put him at, he's already at 4 losses. That'll put him at 5 losses this year. In a team that was, winning the Southeastern Conference and beating Alabama again at the beginning of the year. So that's my take on it. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think during the broadcast, Jordan Rogers, and I forget which one of them said it, but one of them was saying how he looks like he's a very cool customer on the sideline. And somebody said, one of them said, "Have you seen that buyout? I would be too."
Absolutely. I mean, well, I don't know. If you watched him at Florida State, the only thing, he had that one good year that the SEC was down. He had Jameis Winston as a quarterback. And, that came in as, a lot of questions on how he got there. And then he rode that, that 1 year on to, basically on to Texas A&M for a huge contract. And they were looking to make a splash. Texas had been down, and they did. But I'm just telling you, look at his overall win-loss record. And, I tagged him as an 8-4 coach a long time ago. And that's about what he's been.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've been out with Jimbo Fisher for a long time because I've always said if you take away the 2 years Jameis Winston was at Florida State, he's been an 8-4 coach's career.
That's right.
They went undefeated and they had maybe one loss that next year with Jameis Winston's his redshirt sophomore season. And but they weren't that good that year. They just were in a down ACC. And then when they got to the playoff, Oregon ran all over them in that first. That was the first year to playoff, and then you just look at, like you said, what he's done at A&M. The COVID season when they went 8-1, 9-1. Outside of that, they've been an 8-4, 7-5 team. I mean, he's pretty much he's Kevin Sumlin with a national championship. Is basically what he is.
I agree, but the administration has painted themselves in a corner because of huge contract, and I guess you got to give Jimmy Sexton credit for that. He negotiated that thing out. And, it only goes down each year, whatever that contract year. You divide 12 into 95, and whatever that number is, is what $8 or $9 million a year. That's the only amount it comes down each year. So if they fire him this year, 86, I believe is what the number they put out that they'd owe him. But that's all. That's the total length to the buyout. So that means he's stuck. If they want to get it down to a working number, he's going to be there another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and I'll do it last, and we'll kind of jump to one of the games on top. I'll get your thoughts on for this upcoming weekend. But Gus Malzahn, I think, was the highest buyout of anybody, and that was $21 million. And then when you look at Jimbo, he's like 4 times that much. It's just crazy.
No, it is. It is. Well, can you imagine what Dabo is? You saw Dabo's contract was $115 million.
They're making it where they can't get fired, basically.
That's exactly right. They do. I mean, think about it. Dabo, was rumored probably to replace Coach Saban at Alabama, or one of the possibilities. Coach Saban's 70 now. I'll be 71 in October. It'll be interesting to see probably another 2. I think he'll want to stay to Texas and Oklahoma come in. But I don't look for him to coach 5 more years. And Dabo was rumored to come up. Well, take 5-6 years off of that 115. That's still $89 million to pay Dabo off if he decides to go to Alabama. Why would you want to?
Mm-mm. Which Saban, he needs to kind of calm down a little bit over there on the sideline sometimes toward the end of these games. I was worried about him a little bit there for a little bit, Coach.
He did, boy. He went, he threw one of his fits. He takes this game way beyond. I'm sure there are others out there, but I mean, the camera knows he's going to throw a fit, and they keep the camera on him a lot. Now, I will say this: he recovers quite well. I mean, the next play or 2, he's okay, but man, when he's trying to get his point across, you're right. He causes a scene without a doubt.
He knows Miss Terry's going to get a hold of him after the game, so that's why he has that quick turnaround.
Right. Yep, I've no doubt about who runs the household, but it's no doubt about who runs the athletic department at Alabama either.
And that's it.
So anyway, that's it's been ultra successful for him, and for the university and for the state of Alabama and for the SEC. To have somebody like that to stay at the top as long as he has.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's some fan bases will be glad when he does officially retire. I know that.
I believe that.
So this Saturday, the biggest game, which I know the CBS game is Florida and Georgia. That's always the case. But the biggest game is Kentucky at Tennessee, in my opinion. And I just look at this matchup like, everybody is already looking to Tennessee, Georgia. I'm like, well, Tennessee, and the fans are doing. I know not the teams are, but I'm just saying, Tennessee fans, y'all need to get back Kentucky first, because I know you're at home again. It's in Knoxville. It's going to be a night game. That place is going to be loud. But Kentucky does bring in a future first-round draft pick, a quarterback, a good running game. They've got some good receivers. Kentucky's fully capable of putting up some points and some yardage on you, because Tennessee's defense is not that good. Well, I won't say they're bad. They're not good against the pass. We've seen that this season. But when you look at this matchup for this Saturday between Kentucky and Tennessee, what are going to be the keys for you?
The keys for Kentucky to win the football game is to run the football, short passes mainly, but run the football and not keep Tennessee's offense off the field. If you let Tennessee, let's say they've got 8 or 10 possessions. Let's say the first half, they're going to score 3 or 4 times now. I mean, there's nobody in the league can cover that offense with being coverage. Now they may drop into a zone in the secondary. To try to, mess with them. I think Tennessee's smart enough. They'll turn and run the football if that's the case. But the key to it, to me, is if Kentucky's got a chance, is to maintain ball control. They need to keep the ball over 30 minutes of the ball game and run the football if they expect to win. They cannot get in a scoring battle with Tennessee. They'll lose most anybody else would. Alabama did. They almost scored 100 points. Did 52 to 49. So Kentucky's nowhere offensively that versatile, but they do have a good running game. It'll be a very physical ball game. I just don't see Kentucky. I think Tennessee's got momentum now. They've perfected that offense, and I think they come away. They're gonna give Georgia all they want. I don't think it's any doubt. The only thing is, as you pointed out, Phillip, they keep me looking past Kentucky. Now, Tennessee could lose the game, but they'll lose it. I don't think Kentucky's good enough to beat them, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, because I feel like if Tennessee comes in there, they're 100% focused on this game. that they beat Kentucky, but if they are looking ahead to Georgia, that's when I think it gets dangerous because Kentucky's got enough talent, especially being off a week too, which I know Tennessee played UT Martin, but still being off that week, kind of getting healthy because Will Levis has been beat up this year too as well. He's had injury after injury, it seems like, and he gets a week to get well too. So I think that's kind of like, that's my thing with it. If, like I said, if Tennessee comes in 100% focused on Kentucky, they should beat them. But if they're not, Kentucky's capable of upsetting them.
Yeah, they are capable. They have a program. They got a system. Mm-hmm. They can do it by running the football. I mean, if they run off tackle and dive 25 or 30 times in the game and expect to get anywhere from 2 to 4 yards a pop, that'll eat the clock up. Mm-hmm. Tennessee will have to try to strike quick. I don't know how that'll work for them, but the offense is geared to do just that. So I look for it to be a really good ball game, and I think it'll stay close probably to the third or fourth quarter. But I do look for Tennessee to pull away. I don't know I'm sure the line's already out, and I have not even looked at that yet. I'm sure Tennessee's favored in that, but that'll be a good night game to watch Saturday night.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it will be. And Coach, we've hit about the 30-minute mark. It's always fun. I have you on here every week now, talking about these things, breaking down, getting your perspective, get that former coach's perspective. But I appreciate you coming on today as always, and I look forward to talking about that game next week with you to get your thoughts on how it all turned out. And we'll have two big ones to talk about next week too, heading up with Alabama, LSU, and then Georgia, Tennessee. So, but anyways. I appreciate you coming on here once again this week, like you and doing this every week.
Always my pleasure, Phillip. I look forward to next week.
All right, everybody, and thanks again to Coach Max Howell. He'll be back next week. Some good stuff there from Coach Howell, breaking down the Mississippi State issues against Alabama, what's going on with both the Ole Miss defense and then the LSU offense really improving, and how they were able to dominate against LSU on the line of scrimmage. A little A&M South Carolina talk in there as well. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll have a mystery guest. I will say this. He's a guy that comes on here every now and then, and he used to play in the SEC. So I'll let you know that. So I got a former player's perspective. Trying to do that a little bit different. We love our writers that come on the show, which you get Matt Lowe on Thursdays, and get the guys' last word on the different writers I know to cover his team. But it's also cool to have these former coaches that's been in the league, like Coach Howell when he was at Ole Miss, and of course at Florida State too as well. I know they're not SEC, and then obviously when you can get some former players that they've been in these situations, been in these big games in the conference and just in college football in general, it's fun. Or get the voices. If you all on the Phillip Jordan show last week with like the Troy and South Alabama voices, JD Byers and Barry McKnight, just getting those perspectives, bringing in the different variety of people on my shows to talk about that kind of stuff. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Tomorrow is Wednesday, hump day. Like I said, mystery guest on Wednesday. Hope you guys will check that out. And remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Check out the show over on YouTube at Phillip Jordan YouTube channel and the Talking SEC YouTube channel as well. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and then also, leave a comment. I'll read those on future editions as well. And you can also email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. Talk to you guys tomorrow. You've been listening to Talking SEC.
Thank you for listening to Talkin' SEC. Follow Phillip on social media at PJordanSEC and the show at Talkin' SEC Pod. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time when we're talking SEC.